Hello, good evening and welcome. Our topics tonight: as tensions between Israel and Hezbollah continue to increase, EU Foreign Policy Chief Joseph Borrell is visiting Lebanon to advocate for a ceasefire and to address the growing humanitarian crisis. His visit coincides with rising violence, including an attack on a UN peacekeeping base, underscoring the fragility of the situation. Meanwhile, the ICC's arrest warrants for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and former Defense Minister Yoav Gallant over the alleged war crimes have ignited global debate, intensifying scrutiny of Israel's actions in Gaza. And in Europe, the Russia-Ukraine conflict has escalated with Russia's launch of hypersonic missiles, prompting warnings from Poland and heightened defenses in Ukraine, further raising the conflict's risks. Let's begin, though, with the latest developments in the Middle East. Welcome to In Focus.
كل المستهدفين هن مدنيين.
وضع شيء مرعب، شيء بخوف.
The New York Times has recently reported on progress toward a potential Lebanon ceasefire in an article titled "Terms of Proposed Lebanon Ceasefire Begin to Take Shape," officials say. The proposed 60-day truce would see Israeli occupation forces withdraw from southern Lebanon, while Hezbollah would pull back north of the Litani River. Despite cautious optimism, unresolved issues around enforcement and implementation could delay or derail the deal. This ceasefire, if finalized, could mark a critical step towards stabilizing the region after weeks of intense conflict. Now, to discuss these developments more, we are joined by Pierre Khoury, a prominent political writer and researcher with extensive expertise in Middle Eastern affairs. Thank you for being on our program. I'll start with, what significance does Joseph Borrell's visit hold for Lebanon?
Good evening. Yes, Joseph Borrell concluded his tour, a tour that has included Jordan and Cyprus and Lebanon. He held bilateral meetings with Prime Minister Mikati, Speaker Berry, and the Lebanese Armed Forces Aoun, and also the United Nations representative. The discussion centers on the escalating military tension in southern Lebanon and the broader regional implication. Borrell retaliated the EU call for sustainable ceasefire and long-term peace process based on the two-state solution. Again, likewise, what he did is in Jordan, he reassured the European viewpoint about the two-state solution in Lebanon. And I think Europeans believe that this efforts for ceasefire in Lebanon might help the overall process for the solution for the Palestinian issue and the whole turbulence in the Middle East.
What do you make
Borrell,
of sorry, you don't continue, sorry.
Borrell underscored the EU commitment to supporting diplomatic efforts aimed at escalation and promotion of comprehensive peace process in the Middle East. His engagement with regional leaders and civil society organizations reflect the EU proactive approach in addressing the complex challenges facing the region. In general, Europeans now are very afraid of the risks related to the escalation in the between Israel and Lebanon, and believe that such risk might destroy the whole peace process in the Middle East.
And I want to come to the EU's role here, but what do you make of the recent rocket attack on the UNIFIL base, and how does this impact Lebanon's internal stability?
There is something weird in what went with the Italian peacekeepers. serving with the United Nations interim force in Lebanon. And two rockets of 122 millimeters. And what I heard is that the Italians put responsibility on Hezbollah in this. I can see that it adds up, especially after the position of Italy to arrest Mr. Netanyahu and Mr. Gallant as a result of the decision by the International Criminal Court. I don't see it adds up politically. What I can say that there is a chaos there. In southern Lebanon now there is a chaos and nobody knows who's exactly where. I think this is the problem, for sure, for the Italians to say that these rockets were launched from an area where Hezbollah is dominating might be possible, but at the same time, nobody knows who's there, who's not there anymore.
And given the current state of hostilities, how effective can the EU's mediation efforts be in reaching a ceasefire?
Sir, I think there is a certain structure for the ceasefire. Everything starts with the United States. Whenever there is a positive opportunity, the United States might ask for European help. I don't think Europeans have the power to move alone and to put in place any accord without the leadership of this without the United States leadership. This is true not just now. This is true for the whole developments in the Middle East in the last 40 years. And I think this is still true. Now we need to see the pressure that the United States is putting on both Israel and Lebanon and the other regional power involved in this escalation of armed activities.
And Mr. Khoury, how do you assess Lebanon's leadership? Of course, figures like the caretaker Prime Minister Najib Mikati and General Joseph Aoun. How are they dealing with this crisis, do you think?
I think Commander Aoun is not part of the political elite and the leadership, the political leadership. Still, he is a prime employee for the Lebanese government. The assessment should take place when we look at the behavior of both Mikati and Speaker Berri. I think these are now the two persons who are in charge for dealing with the crisis. These people are negotiating with Hezbollah at the same time, negotiating with Mr. Hochstein, and they are running the whole show. Mr. Aoun, on the other hand, might have a role in the future, depending on the kind of settlements that may take place for the issue on the border.
Okay,
but for now, I don't.
Thank you very much. I'm afraid we're just out of time, but we definitely got your points there, Mr. Khoury. Pierre Khoury, who is an expert in Middle Eastern affairs. Thank you very much for joining us on the program. Now stay with us, because next we're going to discuss the latest developments surrounding international legal actions in the Gaza war. Now, according to a recent analysis in Haaretz, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is working to frame the ICC arrest warrants not as a personal indictment, but as an attack on all Israelis. The headline reads, Netanyahu wishes to turn ICC arrest warrants into global no-confidence motion in international law. This strategy, as the article outlines, aims to delegitimize international law while rallying Israelis against what he portrays as external hostility. It's a striking perspective on how the Prime Minister is navigating one of the most significant legal and diplomatic crises of his career. Now, to help us unpack these complex legal and political developments, we are joined by Dr. Bassel Mansour, a distinguished professor of international law. Thanks for being with us on the program. So how do you interpret these global reactions to the warrants? And of course, there seems to be a little bit of a divide between the US reaction and the reaction of European nations.
Greetings, everyone. In fact, the issuance of this arrest warrant for Netanyahu, this is considered a huge development and a huge advancement in international relations and in the enactment of international law. I, as a Palestinian citizen and as a legal expert, I now have confidence once more in the system of international law. And the issuance of this arrest warrant for Netanyahu and Gallant is considered a breakthrough on the level of the international law, because the international law in fact did not been enacted with regards to the atrocities happening in Palestine.
And what challenges do you think Netanyahu might face, both domestically and internationally, as a result of these legal actions?
In fact, there will be cascading challenges for Netanyahu and Israeli chiefs and officials, because during the investigation, a lot of other persons are going to be, I believe, convicted, just as Netanyahu. And since the member states of the ICC are 123 states, these states are legally bound to extradite any of these convicted, indicted persons if they tread their lands. And so right now, Netanyahu and Gallant, their movement is going to be restricted. They're going to be facing a lot of locomotive restrictions. As well, Israel is going to suffer from international isolation. In fact, some statements made by some European political leaders stated that they're going to be cooperating with the ICC, since these European states are actually member states of the ICC, and so they're going to abide by its rulings.
And do you think there could be a chance that these arrest warrants might influence international military aid delivery to Israel or shift broader political alliances? Repeating the question, yes, of course. Yeah, I wanted to ask you if these arrest warrants could, by any chance, influence international military aid delivery to Israel, or perhaps shift the broader political landscape for Israel.
Yes, of course. From my viewpoint, the United States and some other countries are going to support Israel, but there are other states that are going to be abiding by the ICC's ruling. We have to know that every person, that any member state who hosts these persons indicted by the ICC or incriminated by the ICC are going to be partners in crime, or like accomplices to these persons. And still, I know that a lot of states are going to be supporting Israel indefinitely, but others, I'm pretty sure, are going to abide by the court's ruling. From a legal perspective and from an ethical perspective, different member states of the ICC should, in fact, stop the subsidy or the arms delivery to Israel in light of the ruling.
And in broader terms, does this set a precedent for other global conflicts? And perhaps it might lead to accountability for leaders involved in other war crimes? What do you think?
In fact, of course, in a lot of this is going to happen. I think the judges of the ICC, and regardless of the pressures imposed on them by the states and Israel, and we know for sure that the jury of the ICC and the International Justice Court have been going through tremendous pressure imposed on them by the United States and Israel, but still they chose integrity. And this is going to be a precedent, as you are saying, which are going to lead, persons involved in war crimes to actually steer away from those.
Well, thank you very much for joining us on the program. Dr. Bassel Mansour, thank you for shedding light on the ICC's actions and their implications for Israel and, of course, for the broader region. Thank you very much. Finally, turning to Eastern Europe now, we explore the heightened tensions and strategic moves in the Russia-Ukraine conflict. The Washington Post has reported that the Russia-Ukraine conflict escalates. Both sides are racing for advantage before President-elect Trump assumes office. Russia seeks more territory, while Ukraine strives to maintain its sovereignty amid intensifying battles and foreign troop involvement. Trump's proposed quick deal to end the conflict raises concerns. A rushed settlement could leave Ukraine weakened, emboldening Putin and other authoritarian regimes and signaling Western decline. Western hesitation in providing decisive military support has hindered Ukraine's efforts, and any deal that results in Ukrainian territorial losses would reflect badly on the West, weakening global security and empowering authoritarian powers. Now, to provide us with more analysis on the most recent updates in the Russia-Ukraine conflict, joining us from Moscow is Ola Shahud, a writer and political researcher. Thank you very much for being here on the program. Now, how does Russia's hypersonic missile strike on Ukraine reshape the conflict?
Greetings, everyone. In fact, we have witnessed the Western reactions after Putin amended his nuclear doctrine. We have seen how some European countries actually started feeling some apprehensions, and some ambassadors were withdrawn from Ukraine, and some national subjects were withdrawn as well from Ukraine because these European countries feared for the safety of their diplomatic missions and the subjects and the communities residing there. Putin, in fact, is somebody who is completely unexpected, and after he launched this missile that landed in Dnipro, in fact, he regained the formidability of the Russian state. And he was giving a blatant message to the United States that Russia still stands tall as a sovereign, formidable state. And so Putin, in fact, had to launch a cruel strike to the United States, in fact, in order to give them a blatant message not to ever cross the line with them. You know, Putin threatened before to use nuclear arms, and this, if it happened, is going to lead to the outbreak of the World War III, because there is going to be a lot of discord between the major poles of today's international community. Today, if Putin chose to push the green button and to choose to use nuclear arms, this is, as I'm saying, going to trigger a World War III. And once more, Putin chose to launch these specific missiles in order to send a clear message to the United States and to make the United States steer away from ordering Ukraine once more to carry out any assault or any offensives inside Russia, because Russia, in fact, is not at all equipped to get into some kind of direct combat or confrontation with Russia. This is asymmetric warfare here, and Russia has a very potent defense military system, and definitely Ukraine is not up to that or can never counter any kind of attack from the Russian military forces. And Putin, in a televised speech, said and stated that Russia is does not just own nuclear arms, but it as well keeps on producing more and more missiles, and I see.
Well, let me just interrupt you. Let me just interrupt you there, Ms. Shahood, if I can. You've been talking a lot there about World War III. Poland has been warning of a potential global conflict as well. Are you talking about Putin pressing the nuclear button? Do you really think he would ever do that? I mean, if that happens, Russia would be annihilated. Half the world would be annihilated as well. Is that really on the cards?
In fact, pushing the green button means the use of nuclear arms. This means the annihilation of the whole world, including Russia, as you have mentioned, sir. And so Putin is not going to push the green button. And I don't think this kind of confrontation is going to take place. This nuclear confrontation is going to take place. But what we're doing right now is that we're speaking about the different possibilities. We're just, talking about what could happen, but still, Putin is not somebody who's insane. He is a sane person. He understands the repercussions of using nuclear arms, but the fact that he stroked the city of Dnipro with these kinds of a blatant message to the United States and to the world that even if we are not going to use nuclear arms, we still have potent arms, including these missiles that you cannot, counter.
I think that's a very good place for us to finish this episode. There's not going to be World War III. We're hoping and we think. Thank you very much, Ola Shahud, for joining me on the program. And that wraps up this episode of In Focus. Thank you for being here with us. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more updates right here on Q News.